Before we begin, thank you to those in the previous Canucks video who commented Alex Pietrangelo. If you want a chance to be featured in the next one, then hey, stick around to the end of this Canucks discussion video. But you know what, I'm thinking a lot about prospects today, and a lot of that does have to do with the draft lottery. I get that. That indeed is going on later today, so tune into the channel. We're going to be having a stream for the draft lottery, talking about the prospects and the draft itself. Tune in, it's a great experience, but also talking about prospects that have already been drafted. There indeed is a guy that recently signed with Vancouver that I really wanted to highlight here today, so let's go over him because there are a whole bunch of quotes, a whole bunch of comments, and a whole bunch of things that I wanted to cover. Let's talk today about Vasili Podkolzin, and just give a really big general update as to what's gone on with this guy, how exactly he could be at the NHL level next season, and take a look at what other experts, hockey people, are saying about this player. Now, I will say, when it comes to Podkolzin, the biggest thing about his profile that has kind of prohibited me from making videos about him over and over again, like the Caulfields and the Siders and whatnot, is the fact that his point production profile isn't as flashy as the guys like Caulfield. It's not exclusive to Vancouver guys that I just don't make too many videos about them. Back when Quinn Hughes and Elias Pettersson were just prospects, we could make videos every weekend talking about what crazy game they would have, and it would garner attention because everybody would be sold on the hope that these players could come into the NHL and produce at the same rate. Well, we're a few years removed from Pettersson and Hughes' rookie prospect seasons, and it's kind of obvious that they're doing what we thought they would be able to do. But for Podkolzin, he's kind of an anomaly because he's not really supposed to be a top point producer. So if anybody's going to go out there asking for a comparison to Pettersson or if he could be the next Quinn Hughes, absolutely not. Vasili Podkolzin is not that kind of guy, and we went over this briefly in our little update video talking about when he was actually signed, but for Vasili Podkolzin, he's going to come over to Vancouver next season, and he's going to bring an element that Petey, Hughes, Besser, these guys don't really have. And it's that element that pushes him towards doing whatever it is to push the game in the right direction for his hockey team. Vasili Podkolzin is a Russian right-wing player drafted 10th overall by the Vancouver Canucks in the 2019 NHL entry draft. After he was drafted, because the pick was actually made in Rogers Arena, you could see Canucks fans all over on the broadcast kind of with their mouths over their hands. They were kind of shocked because they didn't really think that Podkolzin would be the guy for Vancouver. Quite frankly, I was one of them. I thought they would take Newhook, Krebs, or Caulfield, but hey, Podkolzin is the guy that they took. If you want to talk about who was pumping up the tires for Vasili Podkolzin back in the guy's draft year, we said this in the previous video, but it was Craig Button mostly. After that Ivan Hlinka-Gretzky tournament, Button said that Podkolzin had similar qualities to Pavel Datsyuk. This is the draft that he made in April, where he said that Vasili Podkolzin would go 3rd overall to the Blackhawks, and that he was mature enough, mentally and physically, to play in the NHL next season. To be fair, they said this as well on the NBC broadcast when Podkolzin was drafted 10th overall by Vancouver. I think it was Pierre Maguire who said that he would actually be able to compete in the National Hockey League if it weren't for that 2-year contract that he signed with SKA St. Petersburg. Craig Button the other day was brought back on to Donnie and Dolly on Czech TV to discuss Vasili Podkolzin, and he said he is absolutely ready for the NHL. He will contribute to the Canucks right away. He is only interested in doing whatever it takes to win. Other guests brought on to Donnie and Dolly to talk about Vasili Podkolzin include Lyndon Vey. Yeah, guess what? It's Lyndon Vey, the Willie Desjardins #1 power play center. He said that Podkolzin is a beast. He is so strong on the puck, not your typical Russian. He plays a North American style. Okay, now we're not going to go into that right there. We've seen the Vancouver Canucks management kind of get into hot water, talking about players and race in terms of the styles that they play. Remember Jim Benning with that comment he made a few years ago saying that they want guys with North American heart and European skill? Yeah, there was a lot of criticism behind that, so we're not going to get into that entire aspect. But Vasili Podkolzin is indeed a player who would excel in a small smaller ice surface kind of game plan rather than the larger ice surface KHL kind of hockey that you see over there. We've noted this a ton, but Vasili Podkolzin is not your typical skill guy who's going to go out there and dazzle your pants off and score a highlight reel goal. He'll score his highlight reel goals by taking the puck, driving to the net, and fighting off the forecheck of 3 or 4 guys as he powers his way to the front of the goal. He's got that heart and soul kind of attitude, and he's got no fear in his gameplay either. That this is the kind of guy that can spark a line, spark a team, spark a fan base. It's a completely different skill set from the Petterssons and the Bessers and the Hugheses. Here's an interview from Vasili Podkolzin himself on sport24.ru. We'll read some of the comments over here talking about Podkolzin and his overall psyche, I guess. They asked him if he agreed quickly on a contract with the Canucks, and he said, "The negotiations were mainly conducted by my agent, so it's hard for me to even say how long they took. I'm very glad that I signed a contract with Vancouver, that everything worked out that way. This is all very cool." They asked him when he's planning to fly to Vancouver, and he said the plans are in early to mid-August. He plans to do the main preseason training in Vancouver, but he will also start training in Russia. He says that he has a tourist visa, but he needs to get a worker's visa as well to play in North America, and the fact that there's a Canadian embassy in Moscow is going to help him out tremendously, and his agents will also help him out too. They then talk about the World Championships and Podkolzin not really being put on the team and how he was upset about that. I love the attitude this guy shows off when it comes to facing failure, giving legitimate reasons as to why he would have been left off the team. This guy's really grounded and he's able to understand things from an objective point of view. He says right here he has no grudges and nothing like that, only kind words and support to the national team that he was eventually left off of. When it comes to his KHL team and the relationship with Vancouver colliding with his interests, Podkolzin's agent said on January 11th that Podkolzin would go to Vancouver next season. The question here is, did he decide to leave for Canada even before the start of the KHL playoffs? He says, "If I constantly thought about Vancouver, it would have been wrong in relation to SKA. Of course, this was in my head. I really wanted to try my hand at the NHL, but at the same time, I really wanted to play in the KHL for the national team. Thoughts about leaving arose both before the season and during, on some unsuccessful segments for me. I thought a lot, and I can safely say they gave me chances. At the age of 17, playing in the MHL, they noticed me, and they invited me to the Major League, and then to the KHL. I played on the national team all the time. Thank you so much for that. Hats off to SKA for believing in me." So you love the humility here, and the fact that he is really giving the praise to his own team for giving him that opportunity. When it comes to his own gameplay, he says that he was actually unsatisfied with this season, because he played unstable, and that was his biggest mistake. A good hockey player must play consistently and score points regularly. He had ups and downs, and he's pleased that he had worked out constantly, but he has never been indifferent. As for the rest, he says he could have been better. Podkolzin also responded to the criticism that he faced during, for example, the World Juniors. He says that there's nothing he could really do, he could just work. It's hard not to read it because news is, well, news. On to Vancouver, though. These are the questions talking about the Canucks. Did the Vancouver GMs talk to you often during the season? He says that he got called up 2 or 3 times with GM Jim Benning as well as head coach Travis Green. He also said that he didn't receive any advice from them and that they said just to not worry and to just work. He also says that his English is not great, it's really difficult to learn, and that it will probably take him a few months to get on the spot before he's able to speak normally. Despite the fact that Vancouver did not make the playoffs, there are many talented forwards on the squad. Are you ready to go to the AHL to play if anything happens? And Podkolzin says an answer that I really, really like. Of course. I set myself up for the maximum tasks. I go there to work and nothing else. I would like to play in the NHL, but if I have to go somewhere else to get there, I'm ready for that. He also says that he has no intentions of thinking about returning to Russia, so he's going to come out here to North America, to Abbotsford, where the AHL team is going to be, if they tell him to do that, and he's going to play. Kind of sounds a little bit different from the other Russians that the Canucks have had, like, for example, Kofkov Tryamkin, who refused straight up to play in the AHL. So you know what? This guy right here, Vasili Podkolzin, pretty good gem, eh? Pretty good gem of a pick. Obviously, I don't really expect him to be as good of a point producer as a Newhook or a Caulfield or whatever, but the intangibles, man. You talk about the overall leadership qualities, and this is a guy who's not afraid to get the team rallying behind him, so I'm really interested in seeing how Vasili Podkolzin could play next season, and I'm not even going to try to lay out a prediction here for points. Like, if he gets 30 points, okay, that's great. If he gets 50 points, even better. Since he wasn't really supposed to be, like, the best Swede since Peter Forsberg, like Petey was, or one of the top offensive defensemen in the NCAA, like Hughes was, I'm not really expecting anything big, but when it comes to the overall performance, the gameplay, there's more to the game that Podkolzin brings than just points and goals and whatever. So talk to me in the comments what you think about Vasili Podkolzin and the entire conversation we're having here. If you made it to the end, comment in the comment section below Craig Button, because he is a very hot topic right now. I hope you enjoyed this with Josh Rosen 99, and bye.